Good evening. Welcome to another gripping episode of Zooster by Night, whereupon that we follow down with what our wretched Canaanites are up to in this cursed city. Seth, legate of the Fireflies pack, at the last pack meeting was given two and a half, three different missions, depending upon the level of severity. His scouting missions have been fairly fruitless on all counts. He has not observed anything specific with regards to the police force. He has not observed anything specific when he has approached the airport. And he has had absolutely no luck at all in tracking down Franklin Hatchett or anybody else that can give him leads on Mr. Burns's assets. So feeling a little frustrated and a little dejected, he's going to turn his attention to something that is fruitful, but maybe a little self-serving, but not really when you take a look at the big picture. As with all of the changes and talk about policies and procedures amongst Zooster's population, he seeks out the knowledgeable bishop, Professor Kashrimi. So starting with the bookshop that the illustrious professor owns, Legate Seth approaches, walking a little bit more freely since Simon has altered his face, and so I will not be obfuscated as I approach the shop, and definitely not as I walk in, expecting those in the shop not to recognize me.
As you step into the shop, as always, a little bell goes on, and the person at the counter you recognize very well doesn't recognize you. And he looks up and acknowledges your existence as you're stepping in. And then his head goes back downstairs, downwards, towards he's clearly experimenting or playing a game on his telephone.
And I will do the same gesture as I usually have in case my mannerisms will clue anything in, because I'm sure having people look different is not going to be new. Namaste. Is the eminence in?
The young man looks up, kind of shocked. First of all, namaste is never said by anyone else, but a very, very particular person. He doesn't see at this moment. And second of all, he's asking for the eminence, which is also unusual because he kind of knows most people who come to the bookshop. However, um, you saying that particular word kind of lets off that you probably know a little bit more than the rest of them, and he takes the better chance and simply nods and says, "Yes, I into the back. Want me to get it, or you know what it is, right?" This is his
Yes,
text.
I
Okay.
will. I'll be able to find my way back there.
When you say yes, he will watch after you, so to speak, to make sure that you really know where you're going. But he's not following you; only his eyes follow. And as you touch the doorknob and open the door and go past the curtain, you can see the professor is not in that particular room.
I'll glance over my shoulder to see if the servant is still watching. And
Servant is not watching.
okay,
He's there clearly busy with his phone again.
is there another doorway in this room, or is there a stairway that
There
goes
are
past?
there are three. Um, on your left, there is a doorway, then some bookcases, a small file cabinet. Um, then at the far end, there's another door. You've never seen that door open. And to the right, there's another door, which you always, also you've never seen being opened. On the all the sides are bookcases you know of, and they're all covered with a curtain, not to show the books just yet. Table is still there, cup is still there. Everything looks familiar except you don't see the professor.
Okay. I'll close the door behind me, not trying to be quiet, so in case the sound of the door will attract his attention. And if I don't see or hear from him after a few moments, then I'll head towards the doorway that I've seen open and seen people go through.
Okay. Well, that door is very heavy as you try to open it. And you can see a small panic room, so to speak, how I describe it. There's a bed, has a bookcase with books that are definitely for studying the Sabbat and the world around it. There is no strange looking books over here. Everything's pretty clear. But you can see that someone has been sleeping here, but it's clearly not the professor because all the clothes you can see are dressed for a younger man. It's not the black robes. It's something else.
The new blood, that's right.
Yes.
Well, and he's not here either, so I'll push that door closed behind me, and I have two doorways. I'm going to heighten my hearing to see if I can hear anything through either of the other two doorways.
As you're heighten your hearing, make me a perception of it.
I will do so. So if it's standard difficulty, I got one success.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let me see if I can roll against that. That's manipulation. You can hear something. It's from the door all the way to your right, so it would be definitely straight opposite of the door you just came out of.
Okay.
You can hear some stumbling there, like somebody bumped into a chair or a table, something like that.
Okay. I will knock on the door and then take a step back and just wait patiently.
When you listen for a few seconds, it's all quiet, and then the door opens to the inside, and you can see a room. It's a larger room than you expected. It's a room with a computer in it, a projector of some sort. There's a large map on the wall of Zooster City, which you can clearly recognize. Also, there is a large square table inside. It's so large that you really have to walk around it. So, as you look at it, it's almost like a battle map. This is you can recognize this as some sort of war room, some sort of tactician war room. You can see specific places being pointed out with markers. Little blue flag, you can see little red flags. You can see some notes with a sticky note tagged onto it. You can see some pins being left there, trying to put some locations and add words to them. You don't know what it means, but you can definitely see that someone has been moving all over that map with things and dots and whatever. But as the door opens and you start observing the map, you hear a tapping on the door. Clearly, it's wood knocking on wood. As you turn around, which I assume you will, you can see the professor.
Good evening, Eminence.
Good evening. How may I help you?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm not intruding on an important time. I know that you are always available when there's opportunity to teach or discuss. And with all the upheaval in our city, I just kind of wanted to, I guess, voice and find out, get a little bit of perspective on everything that's happening.
It's never wrong to ask for more knowledge. Who, may I ask, is asking for this knowledge?
Oh, forgive me, Eminence. It is I, Legate Seth. I have had to have a makeover.
Right news. Sure, have a seat. Come back in this room and we'll have a talk. The professor clearly exits this war room and goes
And
back
I'll
to
exit too.
the round table with the chairs.
I'll follow and take a seat.
How may I help you, Mr. Cardigan? Or have you changed your name as well?
Um, no, I'm still, as far as I know anyway, I'm still the same person. Um, there's been a lot that I've been trying to field properly with my role as the advisor and moral compass of my pack. And there seems to be a lot of forces kind of buffeting us about like a toy boat in the waves. We're starting to get some solid ground, but I'm wanting to get some assistance and perspective in being able to prevent these kind of situations from arising if it can be helped.
Right. So, are there any specific things you want advice on?
Well, there seems to be a lot of different interpretations on how the different articles of the code relate to life in the Sabbat. Different people interpret it different ways, different factions, and part of us, I know our strength is the fact that we do have uh, the ability to see things from different angles, and we don't have to agree on anything but the ability to disagree. But not having a unified focus seems very detrimental for an army in the long run.
It's very, very, very problematic. The issue so far is, how do you look at the code? I always consider the code to be a list of principles. Do you know what the word means, principle?
Yes, I'm familiar. Mortals have a lot of different codes that have similar ideals. Ten Commandments, the letters to the Acts of the Christians, the various letters and Gospels, constitutions. Eventually, mortals tend to have amendments, and I know we do have addenda to the code as well, but are do like as principles, they're guiding rules. They're not hard and fast rules.
Well, that's where you're technically wrong. A list of principles. A principle is a rule or a law that is usually to be followed or discernibly to be followed. And if you don't follow it, it has inevitable consequences. That's what a principle or law of rule is. So saying that the code is not a law is wrong. However, the problem with calling it a law would mean that people with different views might think of this as something that would restrict the freedom we want to impose within the Sabbath. Freedom many of us have bled for. Freedom to speak our mind, but also freedom to have a mind of our own. Freedom to have your own opinion, and at the same time freedom to follow the code. You understand what I try to say?
Yes, that if we enforce them as laws, fewer would follow them. Couching them as principles means that more people would exert their freedom to follow them because it wouldn't feel as restrictive. And a lot of the principles within the code protects them for them to overlook the things that they find as an annoyance.
Yes, even eventually some of the addendums change the way things are looked at within the law.
So is there
For
any...
instance,
Okay,
the
sorry.
addendum number 14. All Sabbats have the right to monitor the behavior and activities of their fellow sect members in order to maintain freedom and security. Now, this is a very wide code. Even this addendum can be interpreted many ways, but within the heart of this addendum means the maintenance of freedom and security. Others would interpret it differently. Others would say that people need to mind their own business and not bother with the things I do because I can free willingly do it. I have the right to stab somebody in the eye because I feel like it. That's a freedom. I, however, have the right as a sect member to observe you doing it. The problem with this is twofold. What if you do something and stab somebody in the eye, which I like? What if you stab somebody and I like you doing this, but it endangers the sect? Eventually, with any kind of law and ruling, it comes to your personal interpretation of which value you add to which law. However, like with any law, and this is something I'm not supposed to teach, but understand that with any law, the most important thing is not getting caught. Enforcing the law is something we all must do individually. Sometimes our, I wouldn't say elders because it sounds wrong, But our superiors, like in an army, adjusted. But still, every law leaves many things to interpretation, because every situation might be differently. However, we made ourselves some ground rules, some things everyone must abide by. We must all stand behind the sect and its regent. If necessary, of course, there's a new regent that shall be elected, blah blah blah. And the regent must not support or relieve from tyranny, granting all Sabbat freedom. This was one of the main rules and is one of the main rules within our code. However, because I just told you, it can never endanger the sect, because that's the first line. Remain united in its support of the sect's regent. The sect's regent, not the regent's personal party, not the regent's house guard party, the sect's regent. The second law is that all Sabbat must do their best to serve their leaders, as long as said leaders serve the will of the regent, and the regent follows the will of the sect. Every time we must ask ourselves the same questions. Do we act according to the sect? And what does the sect want? The sect wants the relief from freedom and granting all Sabbat freedom. The relief of tyranny and the granting of all Sabbat freedom. Now the third law restricts part of this freedom by saying that all Sabbat shall faithfully observe the auctoritas vitae. But as you watch a vitae and you disagree, you have the right, the freedom to disagree. But you must tend these things faithfully. Remember that it's the sect they're serving. Do you have any questions so far?
No, the first three rules are pretty all-encompassing, obviously. Basically the leaders of the Sabbat serve the Sabbat, just as the Sabbat serves their leaders. And the Auctoris Rite, those are the things that bind us. Those are the things that maintain our cohesiveness, allow us to grow and change and improve.
Right. Yes, you understand. You understand. I'm happy you understand. So the fourth one is all Shabbat shall keep their word of honor to each other, or to one another, as it's written most of the time. The problem, however, with the word of honor is first you must believe in honor. That's a tricky thing. However, it always serves to remember that your word of honor is also a word that you say to serve the sect.
So conflicting allegiances, which happens, ultimately it's the sect that we need to show honor to first and foremost.
Yes. And also always remember which one of your conflicting allegiances serves the sect more. Always try to find out what the sect really wants, so you can make the right choices. 5. All Sabbath shall treat their peers or their brothers fairly and equally, upholding the strength and unity of the Sabbath. If necessary, they can provide the needs of their brethren. Technically, that is what I am doing with you, and which you try to do with your pack members. Try to look at them fairly and equally, upholding the strength as a priest, or as a bishop in my account.
Technically, doesn't that article encompass the entire sort of Cain? Are we not all peers and equal in Cain's eyes?
Yes, but remember, there are more laws to follow. We go all the way down. So, although you're right and we are all equal, the weird thing is, in some cases, some are more equal than others. This drives us to more codes I'll explain later, and how you must see it, or how I feel like you must see it. 6. All Sabbath, but put the good of the sect before their own personal need, despite all costs. This, in my opinion, is what has been wrong with Zooster all along. When I arrived, I noticed this immediately. I noticed it when people chose their bishops. People were there for their own personal need. I need the archbishop to be removed. I need to become bishop. I need to gain more power. I need to gain more influence. All of them forgot that they must put the sect above their own personal need.
Your Eminence, I can see where that would be challenging to try to get through individuals like that. And I think that you've probably faced similar issues with your pack as I do with mine on this article. Is there
Oh
any
yeah,
way that we can break through that barrier, that obstacle with their mindset?
there is a way, but most of the time it's for their own personal way to do so. We are very selfish creatures. We do selfish things for our own personal gain or need. Try if you can adjust it so that their personal need and their personal endeavors to greatness fall align with the will of the sect. If I gain a lot of power within this city, through the humans, for instance, do I do this because I want to control humans? Or do I want this because I want to make sure that I control these humans to serve the sect?
He'll nod in agreement.
So the 7th one is those who are not honorable under this code will be considered less, see, as I told you, less and equal, and therefore unworthy of assistance. As we have seen at 5, I need to provide all needs for their brethren. Those who are not honorable, therefore, are not considered worthy of assistance. Therefore, you would say not complete brethren. Technically, it's totally taking down 5 but 7, but only if they oppose 4. You see how this is all coming together like a puzzle?
Yes. That if one is focused on their own personal needs and it coincides with the needs of the sect, then that's good. If it's aside from what the sect needs, we can tolerate it. But if their personal needs conflict with the sect and they don't buckle, they get run over, as they should.
Yes, that's the idea behind it. So the next one, 8. 8 says the following: as it has always been, so shall it always be. The lex talionis shall be the model of immoral justice, by which all Sabbat shall abide. Are you familiar with the lex talionis?
Somewhat. I don't think I've heard it exactly phrased like that. I'm trying to think of the terms that my sire's pack used.
Alright. Well, to clarify your mind, the lex talionis is also known as a blood hunt.
That, yes, that makes a lot more
It's a
sense,
call for final death.
which we have seen.
The interesting thing is the word lex talionis is not originally from our sect. It's a word far older, before sects. But it means that when final death is called, all Sabbat shall abide, which also coincide with the rules of the blood hunt. When the blood hunt is called, you are forbidden, strictly forbidden, to assist that person which the blood hunt has been called upon. Assisting that person makes you fall under the same ruling and will have you destroyed. Have you been witness of many blood hunts?
Um, one or two prior to coming to Zooster, um, because when we would wander into a city that happened to be calling one, it was a big deal to try to beat the locals, but not a lot. I would say the recent one against Mr. Burns has been the one that I've been more actively involved in.
Yes, but the one of Mr. Burns never went according to what a blood hunt should be. We'll get to that later when we talk about the Auctoritas Rite. Number 9. All Sabbat shall protect one another from the enemies of the sect. Again, they refer back to the will of the sect. However, it also follows the sentence, personal enemies shall remain personal responsibilities unless they undermine the sect security.
Well, if
Again,
personal enemies undermine sect security, then that kind of makes your personal interests conflicting with the sect's interests.
yes, but as always, sect comes before pack. Pack becomes before individuals.
You can
The
make a
10th.
perception empathy roll. So we've touched base on enough topics here.
What do you want to know?
You can make a perception empathy roll.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Seth's mood in this conversation is very much shifting.
You want me to roll it?
Yeah, if you'd just because I assume that you're probably paying attention to what my responses are.
Yeah, of course. Perception, empathy. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
4. Okay. He's still, like being respectful and everything, but you can see that his mood has definitely improved, and he's kind of giving himself a little bit of a self-satisfied smile as we're delving into how these codes play out in real life.
Okay. Well, the professor smiles as well, having the feeling that what he's explaining gets through to Seth. He does know, however, how Seth, which issue Seth's dealing with, so he can't react in that particular part.
Yeah.
And the professor will look up to you and say,
I hope this is helpful so far. Only 6 more to go.
Very helpful, Professor, actually. I'm impressed, despite having a lot of formal discussions on the code, how many of these points have resonated with me.
Many are overlapping. As long as you always got the first ruling straight, sects before all, then things will make sense. Just observe carefully anything you see, that it never goes against the principle of the sect. For instance, the 10th rule: all sect members shall protect Sabbat territory from all other powers. This is a very simple commandment. Then again, it's very wide interpreted. What is protection? For instance, I feel that many of the inhabitants of Zooster have failed protecting this city.
Well, I would agree. I think there's a lot of areas where we left ourselves open, and our enemies have taken advantage of that. Now we have to reclaim our territory.
Technically, that means we're all in fault. Of the code itself. However, if you're working on protecting but have not protected yet completely, I hope the people in charge, Cardinals, Whiskey, will abide or trying with our challenge to uphold principle. The 11th principle is the spirit of freedom shall be the fundamental principle of the sect. All Sabbat shall expect, and demand freedom from their leaders. This technically means things as conditioning people, things that might change people's personal appearance by demanding it so, by the ways of disciplines. It's against the spirit of freedom and against the fundamental principle of the sect.
Except when such things are required for the safety of the sect.
Exactly. Except if it's the will of the sect. If it endangers the sect, then it can definitely be a thing.
Well, and that is, I'll admit I was reluctant, but that is why I underwent the change. It's
The
required.
facial change me. You mean the facial change, right?
Yes.
I understand. It goes against your personal code of honor, maybe. You have your own way and your own face. It goes along with your own principles. Losing that face does not mean losing principles, but it does mean that you have to put your own personal feelings after the feelings or principles of the sect. That's a personal challenge. And in case when it's your face or body, a very, very personal challenge.
Face or body or mind.
The 12th principle or law of the code is the rites of monomancy shall be used to settle disputes among all Sabbat. This is an interesting one because it also has addenda within the ritual itself, which means that you can challenge me, Mr. Cardigan, to a rite of monomancy. You have that right because you are a member of our sect and you may call yourself Sabbat. I, however, having a different rank, can either choose to refuse you or, in my case, even try. Let's see if I can find a champion willing to take my place in this rite. Having the right to say no against the rite of monomancy protects those in charge from making hard choices, choices that affect many people, many Canaanites, without every single time they make an unpopular demand or an unpopular ruling, they have to find several monomancies just to make that ruling so. The 13th is all Sabbat shall support Black Hand. Have you ever heard of the Black Hand?
I have heard but never met anybody. And I'm not quite sure if what I've heard is necessarily true or not.
Then they did their job well. It's a subdivision. It's a sect within a sect. An elite group of Sabbat vampires, recognized as separate from all other members of Sabbat. They are essentially the MPs of the Sabbat, also known as Sabbat military or the military police of the Sabbat. Technically, because most members are unknown to be members. It's the eyes of the sect among everyone. It would even said that in the beginning, the Black Hand was clearly made primarily of Assamite anti-tribute, along more militant vampire clans from other groups, vampire bloodlines. But like I said, the members of the Hand do not exist in pacts. They are members of normal Sabbat pacts, and those pacts are most of the time unaware that they exist as such. But, like the code says, you have the right as this 14th code says, you have the right with the in mind the freedom of security of the sect, the right to monitor the behavior and activities of my fellow sect members. Not knowing someone is Black Hand and finding out are two different things. It is a possibility. I personally consider it failing of the Black Hand member to keep his identity secret. However, it's good for those who find out with good intentions. The 15th code is all Sabbat possess the right to call a council of their peers and their immediate leaders, which means you have the right to call a council of all Bhakti priests and bishops, as I am technically your immediate leader. I, however, have the right to ask the cardinal or an archbishop to be at that same meeting for him to decide if it's worthy enough to be present at that meeting is something without my control. But he has the right, and sometimes I have the privilege to be at a meeting. Last but not least, all Shabbat shall act against sect members who use the powers and authority the Sabbat has given them for personal gain at the expense of the Sabbat. Action shall be taken only through accepted means approved by a quorum of Christi, which technically means, as a final hammer, that personal gain at the expense of the sect is a sin itself and a transgression of the code. How do you feel about that, Mr. Cardigan?
That they should, excuse me. So it's saying that not only are we monitoring the behavior and activities of sect members, but we should actively act against them if they are using their authority for personal gain at the expense of the Sabbat. That makes sense because that bumps all the way back to one of the, first half of the code where if your personal interests conflict with the sect's interests,
Exactly.
if you're actively getting personal gain at the expense of the sect, you're setting as you're the one that's calling the blood hunt, the wild hunt. It's
Yes,
not the people that are discovering your machinations.
exactly. So, For instance, it would be against the interests of the sect for me to tell you to destroy one of your pack members for my personal gain. You have the right. I consider it. The you have the not even the right. You have the duty to call me on that, and make it that it doesn't happen this way. If I, as a person, would have problems with any of the pack members, I have the right to call them out for a monument. That's how we deal with it. However, if I can prove without a reasonable doubt that he's acting against the sex will, then we have the right to call a council with peers and make a ruling as such, making the situation go away by means of politics without a monument. To make it even more politically clear, if I would have personally charged Mr. Burns, for instance, with personal gain, cowardice in the face of the enemy, and something else which is disturbing, he would have the right to call monomancy on me for making those statements. However, if I could prove them in the eyes of the sect that they are correct, then he has no longer have the right to call monomancy on me because he disagrees. I disproven him. I've just proven that he goes against the sect, and therefore he cannot simply call I disagree. The code dictates that because this has happened, I have the right to call a blood hunt. The right to destruction of Lex Leonis, you know the word. Politics. These rules were made with freedom in mind, but freedom takes responsibilities, and those who have responsibilities must also have some sort of exemption outside of the rules in order to act in order of the general interest of the entire sect. And the sect has the principle, basic principle, to act with the freedom in mind of all sect members.
Thank you for clarifying. That's put a lot of things in perspective for me.
Is there something bothering you, priest? Something you want to figure out?
I wouldn't say that I had self-doubt about some of my decisions, but I think I just wanted to make sure that my path is in the right trajectory. And I think that you have reinforced that I am walking the right path.
Which path or which trajectory?
Not philosophically, not a philosophical
I
path.
figured as much.
I have not been mentored, but
Which
as my role
direction do you feel like you must take in order to protect or to do the right sect?
for the right of the sect,
Or right do do right by the sect. So you make decisions as a priest, and you do this with the sect and the pack in mind.
The
So
sect
what
first
decisions
and
do you
the
have trouble
pack.
with?
My pack is my pack has been some of my decisions have been unpopular with them, and I have gotten support from bishops on my decision making process, but they still, I think I have lost some of the respect that I had previously earned from them because they don't understand the big picture on what kind of decisions those in charge have to make.
They have the right, Seth. They have the right for a full explanation onto why you make decisions. Why do you want to impose or restrict their freedom in some way in order to protect the freedom as a whole of the sect? Individuals come last, sex comes first, then comes back. It's quite easy to explain, very hard to actually do.
Yes. And like I said, sometimes there's mental barriers that are difficult to push through.
Yes. We're also living in a time where taking orders is something which sounds vile, while in the time where I was born, taking orders was something natural. It was normal to take orders from superiors because superiors you respected because you believe in the in the organization which gave you the superior. For instance, as a priest, people saw you as an expert and a superior within your congregation. You've got that respect earned as a priest for being a priest yourself. Being a priest earns you respect in in the older world. In the newer world, however, because all priests are now considered perverts, all priests are now considered not to be straight, but all gay, because people see one priest's action and consider the entirety of the priest's community to do exactly the same thing. Only righteous actions can pierce these people's belief these days in what you're doing is for the good of your faith. In that instance, in our instance, good for the sect. For instance, I have asked people, as I will ask you, to help me in finding a way to strengthen this city. I believe we must strengthen this city by building up its defenses so it can't really be attacked by the Camarilla as easy as it has been. I need money to do this, to buy the right people to do this for us. I do this not to gain personal interest. I do this to gain the interest of the sect. However, with gate power and money also comes the accountability process. As a bishop, you need to be accounted for things. As a priest, you have accountability for things. As a sect member, you have the least accountabilities. You just have the accountability of your own actions. I have partially the accountability of the actions of the entire city of Zust. To bear these responsibilities, I need things that I can use, people I can use in a way. I consider the kind people I need to use to run this city properly. To have these people, I need monies and I need names to contact so I can enforce upon them by the good of the sect, the influence I need to run the city. For instance, I need a way to monitor the things that happen in the city. Because you have seen all around you, the city has been ground to a halt. No new buildings are being built. The unions have stopped working because I guess some have not been paid in a while. I need to increase the money flowing into the city. And for this to happen, I need money to spend on people making this city run. What we want is our food source to increase, not decrease, as some will say. We need them to increase so it becomes easier for us to get what we need and to do what we feel like we have the right and the freedom to do, all within the eyes of the sect. You understand me, Mr. Cardigan?
Yes, I mean, that's been the purpose behind my desire for getting mortal contacts in this city. I've been thinking a little bit on this subject that to turn this city around from a mortal standpoint, right now they're nervous, they're agitated, they're scared. The
Yes.
whole police business, though, might work into our advantage long term once we cut the strings of the current puppet masters, because now we have increased police presence in Zooster. People are scared because of some of the things that's been going on.
Yes.
So when the police are effective in reducing the crime in the city, that's going to allow the kind to get more relaxed and attract people with more money to come and live in Zooster in our dining table.
Exactly. For people with money to arrive in the city, we must have a good economical system which makes them want to invest in Zooster. We need to put money into people's hands for them to spend it in order to increase the wealth of the city in total. We can't be stuffing it in mattresses and waiting for a good moment. Of course, we can do this by corruption, which is how we deal with things in order to make things run. This is the way most Sabbath deal with things. It's not the way I like to deal with things. I'd rather go for loyalty. And money makes a loyal friend only if your pocket is deep enough.
Well, this is more long-term planning anyway, because of more immediate concern is those pulling the strings of the police and those that are nesting in the airport.
Yes, the airport needs to be dealt with smartly. We cannot charge and barge in or send scouting parties killing people ahead.
No, any kind of violence in the airport would be worse than the violence we've already been seeing in the streets.
We need proper scouts investigating and bringing back information without being seen. People who have the ability to be unseen, like our Malkav friends, or Nosferatu, or maybe even myself.
Well, that is why our pack has been, actually, I'm not quite sure if we've taken it on ourselves, been assigned, or both, but we've been attempting to get some recon on the airport.
It's never bad to be all three. Everyone knows this situation needs to be dealt with. I'm sure a bishop, one or two, have been telling you to take care of it. If you have the sect's interest in mind, You have come up with the same idea as well. It's not something that's easily hidden. This situation needs to be dealt with and quickly.
Yeah. No, agreed. Well, Your Eminence, thank you for the illuminating discussion. Uh, Funds I do not have, but the ductus of our pack is definitely a money man. If there is some funds that they can start with, he may be able to help invest and make that into more funds quicker than normal.
What's his name?
Alistair Cavill.
I will talk with Alistair. See if he can give me some financial advice. Maybe even some assistance in getting the things we need
Well,
for the
he's
sect.
well for the good of the sect, we have been making some attempts to get influence over the mortal populace to varying degrees of success, but I believe the arena that he's been working on has been that in the financial centers. So the more influence and control he gets, then the more he can assist you with your plan in turning the city's financial state around.
Wonderful. I'll definitely have a talk with him. He might have some original view in how to deal with issues lingered far too long.
For
Very
sure.
well, Mr. Cardigan. I hope I've been as helpful as you have been to me. Thank you for the insight in your clan, your pack, and the city itself.
Thank you, Your Eminence. And I shall see you again another night, hopefully both of us with better news on recent events.
I hope that's what keeps us alive. I bid you a well good day, and
Good.
Cain guide your hand.
That he will. And he'll bow politely and then take his leave of you.
As you leave, he goes back into the room that you found him in, or you thought you found him in before he appeared behind you. And as soon as you leave, um, you can hear actually there's no one inside the shop anymore. Everything's gone still and quiet. As you leave, you can hear the lock on the door click closed. The lights are put down and off. And you assume that everyone's going to rest as soon lights will go up in a few hours.
And Legate Seth will head out into the night, feeling invigorated after his discussion with the professor and continuing on with the primary missions of dealing with the intruders of the city. So thank you for sitting in and watching a little bit of a educational session, and we will see you again in the Nights of Zooster. Sleep tight, for we are the boogeyman under your bed. Good night.